Morning, everybody. Welcome to the second Economic Development Forum. I'm going to do a quick intro and a recap of the first forum, and then I'm going to turn it over to our consultants from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. So during the first forum, we introduced some data from two reports, one an economic indicators report, and that gave some basic demographic information about Amherst that came from the census and the American Community Survey, and then some newer data about the largest employers in town, both nonprofit and for-profit, the amount of commercial space, what the commercial rents look like, what the building stock is throughout town. There was also a retail market study, and the purpose of that was to understand better who residents are as consumers, what their spending habits are, where they're going out of town to buy things, and where outside of town are they going? Are they going to Hadley along Route 9 or Greenfield or Holyoke? What are people coming here for? What are we strongest in the retail sector? And what new retail can be supported? I'm just going to try and walk around to get rid of that heartbeat. It's beating very fast. So the purpose of that meeting was to share some data and get feedback from the community. Are we on the right track? Does this seem accurate? And we heard that some of the data didn't seem quite accurate based on common knowledge, and so we're going back through the process and looking at the underlying data, and it seems like some of the more obvious ones were that certain businesses in town were not categorized exactly like they should be. And one example of that is I think Atkins was considered a florist, and so we had $2 million in sales for florists, and they sell flowers, and so it makes some amount of sense. So we're going back through and being able to explain what some of that data says. The last thing I'm going to say before I hand it over is that, you want me to move to that mic? Okay. Hello? Okay. Is that in addition to this forum today, there's going to be an online form, and it'll be posted hopefully early next week, where if you didn't get to provide as much feedback as you wanted today, you'll be able to go through, confirm strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, add your own that you may not have gotten to mention today, so that we can collect information not just from the people in the room, but for others who might not have been able to make it this morning. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our consultants. Lori Tanner is a Senior Economic Development and Policy Analyst for Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and Susan Westa is a Senior Planner. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff. Hello, everyone, this morning. So as Jeff said, at the last forum, we looked at local economic indicators and a retail market study. And so now we're going to incorporate those findings into a broader and more qualitative assessment of Amherst's economy. So we're going to show you what we found, and I think I want to start there. And then we're going to be getting your input and feedback throughout the morning, okay? So for the SWOT analysis, we want to note that strengths and weaknesses are internal factors, and threats and opportunities are generally external. And we'll see examples of that. However, I'm going to do it in a slightly different order because I prefer to end on a note of optimism. So I'll still say SWOT, but we'll do it in this order. To conduct the analysis, we first reviewed the wealth of plans that have already been done in Amherst, everything from an open space plan to a very detailed and comprehensive master plan. We also looked at the zoning bylaw and the permitting process. We did an on-the-ground field survey of some of the recent development downtown, in the villages, and on campuses. and we're conducting interviews with some of the key stakeholders. So we conducted a general SWOT, and then we broke out 2 areas that really required a little more in-depth exploration. So what we're going to do is take it step by step. We're going to do each one of these, and then, but within each one, we're going to stop and get feedback after strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities, so that it's fresh in your mind. Okay, so this is the general SWOT. As far as strengths, as well as being a seat of higher education, Amherst has many of the qualities that people look for in a home or a vacation destination. It has a beautiful landscape, an appealing town center, and has a vibrant culture of civic engagement. The major employers are stable, and while there has been some conflict and controversy over development, town residents are generally in support of certain types of development, as you can see here, as indicated by surveys and town meeting votes. So we're going to stop here and get your feedback. And just remember that we are going to get into more detail in some areas, and so it may be a matter of, we're getting to that. But if there are any sort of large overarching issues that you want to talk about as strengths, this is a good time.
Anybody want to volunteer? Ira, can you? No, it's for the video. It's for the recording, please. Sorry.
Well, one obvious strength is that we have populations that come here and can't avoid coming here. Parents bringing their students for college and the different conventions and things like that. They're not a captive audience, but they are a regular audience, and we certainly don't have to grow our population of residents to, get some business from them.
Thank you. Bill?
Trying to figure out how to make the place viable in summertime. Note that the Emily Dickinson History Museum, the Emily Dickinson House, and our History Museum are an international draw, and we should be major recognition.
Thank you. I can't go that far back. Would people prefer the knocking of the wireless mic, or?
Hi, I'm just wondering, under agricultural-based business for new development, and maybe I missed something, where the new marijuana industry is going to go, because not only do we have opportunities for shops and growing, but there's research laboratories and testing laboratories, which seem like an absolute excellent fit for us. And so there's a whole new industry about to land on us, and I hope that it's represented.
Yeah, we are going to get to that.
Okay, sorry to preempt.
That's okay. No, we're still taking down everything that you say.
Any other comments at this point? All right. Okay.
So, weaknesses and threats. Well, there are so few that I just had to put them all on one slide. So Amherst's physical location is distant from other centers of population and culture, and it risks losing people and businesses. Conflicts over development can divide people, and more steps are needed to address development regulations. And there is also a risk of losing the integrity of the historic landscape if too many individual historic buildings are lost. So that's it on this. So we're back to you. Yes.
Oh, and please identify yourself.
Alex Kent with the Amherst Food Co-op. We do not have walkability downtown to retail grocery store, and that's something we're trying to correct. Amherst does not have its own community-owned, community-based grocery store.
Thank you.
I think it would be easy to lose the balance between town and gown and become much more of a college town than a family town.
here.
And would you consider that a threat? Yes. Okay, thank you.
The front row is available, by the way. It's not SeaWorld, you know, where the...
Kelly Irwin. I just want to say that I think it's a real weakness that we have let our sidewalks and roads deteriorate so much in the downtown, so that when both citizens and tourists go through the downtown, it does not have the appearance of the town that we think it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So there are some very promising opportunities in Amherst, and we'll discuss some of these in the upcoming sections. The industry analysis that we already did indicates that there might be potential for more educational support services and for agricultural products. But the feasibility of these and other types of businesses would need to be investigated. So, oh, and I should note that that photo is of the pollinator garden at the Hitchcock Center, and I thought that was a good metaphor for this. So that's it for the opportunities that we, you know, the short version of opportunities for the overall town. There's much more coming, but your feedback again on this, keeping you guys busy.
Yes.
I'm not sure where this fits in, but in terms of revenue,
What's your name?
Andy Churchill. In terms of revenue, we've got a captive audience here with the colleges, and taxable student housing seems like something that should be, if it were placed somewhere, there would be a way to enhance revenue, and why not?
Thank you.
Running along the railroad track is a very high-speed fiberglass line that serves UMass and Holyoke. And I think the whole town should be able to benefit from that fiberglass high internet opportunity. We have a terrible service.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Just to clarify, Bill, are you talking about like the service you get from Comcast or Verizon? Okay.
Well, it's
Com-
very slow
home,
in
so, yeah.
comparison, and it slows down when it wants to. Yeah.
When it wants to.
I think there's an opportunity to develop downtown with 3-story buildings instead of have this contentious leave it as it is versus 5-story buildings.
The problem with that is that anything more than 1 story needs an elevator.
Hi, Jennifer Page. I don't know if this belongs in opportunities or weaknesses, and I think there are probably two sides of the same coin. But I guess my question is, who's benefiting from this development? And is it benefiting all area or Amherst residents? Is it benefiting low-income families who live in apartments? Is it benefiting people of color? Or are we only thinking of, I don't know, I guess I don't know who. I'd like more focus on who's benefiting from these changes.
That's an excellent question.
Hi, Sarah LaCour. I appreciate the quote from the master plan, but I think it would be great to go deeper. And the fact that our new town council is going to go back to the master plan, but I think it's looking at the balance of all of it, looking at our housing, our economic development, our historic character, our landscape fabric, and make sure that we're going back to getting a fine balance of making sure we have revenue, but protecting our natural resources, our historic resources. So, you know, as much as I like that quote, but really delving deep back into the master plan to get that balance.
And we'll be addressing that a little bit too.
Okay, I think that's it for the
Okay.
general.
Okay, so we're going to begin with tourism and entertainment. And we found that Amherst tourism and entertainment strengths are many. We know that Amherst is a destination. We saw that in the retail market study. And we know that between the university, the colleges, and local attractions, over 300,000 people visit the town each year. and that's probably a low estimate. The Eric Carle Museum alone brings about 50,000 visitors annually, and the Emily Dickinson Museum draws 15,000. In the summer, there are events at Hampshire and Amherst colleges, conferences at UMass, and all year round there are parent weekends and other occasions at the schools, as you mentioned. The town holds local events as well, some of which draw from surrounding towns. And you have other attractions that are unique in the Pioneer Valley, such as the Art House Cinema and the Mount Holyoke Range State Park. You're also building on the downtown art scene by hosting the Arts Night Plus events. More is coming. The bike share program will increase activity on the rail trail to Northampton and also between town and UMass. And other positive efforts are in the works. So visitors to these many attractions and events are taking advantage of local hotel rooms, inns, B&Bs, Airbnbs, and of course the coffee shops, restaurants, and bars. And existing web portals are available for visitors to explore their options. So that's it for strengths. Wait, that's it for strengths, yeah. So we'll stop again here and get your feedback.
Just a question I want to get. Well, how do you define visitors?
How do you define visitors?
How do you define a visitor?
Well, it's based on the specific entity that is being visited, so they keep counts. And so, you know, when I contacted the Eric Carle Museum, they tell me that they have 50,000 visitors a year. So they have their, whatever method they are using. Same with, you know, I looked at the Fine Arts Center and I looked at the Mullen Center, and they have data for their visitor numbers. But, you know, it's not capturing it's not capturing the parents' weekends. It's not capturing just sort of general people coming in to go to eat.
Different type of person.
Right.
Versus a participant, a resident just being active in town. Is that considered a visitor?
Well, if they go to the Emily Dickinson Museum, yes, and they're a visitor there. But if they're just wandering around downtown and going into shops, then they wouldn't be counted officially.
Significantly different in economic generation, though.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess we are talking about visitors from outside primarily.
And
I think what we're saying is if you visit the Eric Carle Museum, you very likely could be from here, so that's entertainment. It's not tourism, right? Whereas if you're actually from out of town, you're a visitor to the town.
Visitors around any other organizations typically use anybody traveling 50 miles or more. Just so we understand the difference in what I would consider whatever we're just entertainment, recreation, actively involved in the community versus generating income.
Yeah, I
so
mean, that
just to repeat that into the mic for the folks listening at home, I think there's a general understanding that people who travel more than 50 miles are visitors, and one of the things that the town is creating is a template intercept survey so that we can get better data, because some of these places just have a door counter, so everybody walks through the door, oh, we had 50,000 visitors, we don't know where they're from, how long they're staying, if they're staying in a hotel. So we're trying to get more granular data on that.
well, I think,
50 miles might be a little bit stretched.
yeah.
You know, coming from Enfield or whatever, I agree. Those are economic people that are generating revenues versus just all of us going to the Eric Carle. I think it's a completely different analysis.
Right, but I think that even if you're just looking at adjacent towns, that's still visitors, because they're not spending money in the town they live in. They're spending money in Amherst. Yeah, so that's something that you could get into more.
Sorry to bother you again. We have thousands of people who give lectures every year, and the public isn't really. They need to be marketed if they are really open to the public, which I don't think.
You mean at the
Not only
university?
do you have to market them, let people know all over the world that there is the most famous expert in something giving a lecture tonight. They'll come. As they come to my farm, to see my chestnut trees. People come from all over the country to see real chestnut trees growing. And why do they grow? I don't know where they grow. So I think we should do that. And furthermore, when you get the people here, you got to get them a good way to get to the lecture. Because Amherst College or UMass, you can't park. So you got to give them an Uber ride or something to get them there.
Thank you.
This is kind of a strength that could be an opportunity, but those two go together, is the number of people who retire here. And I had heard a story years ago that faculty bounce around until they figure out where they want to retire, and then they get tenure there. And if there's stories like that in Amherst, it would be good to get them told so that other people can say, hey, that's a great place to retire.
Thank you.
Great idea. Anything else? Okay. Now, weaknesses in tourism and entertainment come mostly from competition and from lack of marketing rather than any kind of insufficiency in local attractions. Other than perhaps, a downtown music venue might, the lack of a music venue might be considered a weakness. Logistics are also a factor, the distance to travel and the cost, and sometimes the inconvenience of parking. And I think I was definitely on the low end of that spectrum this morning, coming in at 7:30. So.
Yep.
I'm just curious, you have parking mentioned twice. Under competition from UMass, parking sites remote from town center, what are those two have to, I'm not seeing the connection between parking sites remote from town center has to do with competition from UMass. I guess I'm just, is that like
okay,
UMass
so
parking?
all right, so someone goes to the Mullen Center, they park down, way down there, and it's not convenient to then, kind of walk into town and have dinner. So many people might just hop right back on the highway and leave. Same with the Fine Arts Center. I mean, I drive into Amherst Center, have dinner, and then drive again over to the Fine Arts Center, but maybe, a lot of people won't do that. So, okay, we need a shuttle. We need a little...
Again, I heard this years ago from several merchants that after events at UMass, I don't know if this still happens, the police direct traffic away from downtown to clear the area faster, and it makes it harder for people coming from Mullen Center to come into town.
Yeah, there's a mass exodus, out that away, west. Okay. So if weaknesses are not addressed, competition from Northampton and from the venues at UMass could be threats to the tourism and entertainment scene. There's really just so much going on at UMass in terms of entertainment. And as development continues along Route 9 west of town, travel times may increase. And again, I mentioned the concern about historic character because that is a significant strength and draw in Amherst. I know that you would never allow this to happen, but just a light touch on the issue.
Just ask, what's about the casino and the effect that might have?
So the casino as a threat. So the question is, will Amherst be affected by all the visitors going to Springfield for the casino? I know there have been some studies on that, something to look into.
Yeah, I can give my personal opinion, which is I think it's more of an opportunity than a threat. It's going to be a regional, maybe more than regional draw, and an opportunity for maybe if their family's going as a family to have some of those folks coming up here to the Eric Carle to see Emily Dickinson. So I think that it's an opportunity to bring more people up. And I think that's the way Northampton sees it as well. And what they're trying to do.
And not to get into strategies or anything, but there would be ways to market Amherst down there. But we'll get there. Anything else on weaknesses?
Shoshona King. I used to live in Hadley, and about 10 years ago in the town meeting, it was suggested to time the lights on Route 9, and the selectmen had it in their mind that that would cause speeding, and they voted against that. Maybe it's an idea that, 10 years has passed, and maybe if Amherst leans on them a little bit to work on that project, maybe something can happen. I don't know. Just an idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in the spirit of ending on a note of optimism, there are some opportunities that look quite promising. For example, this band is coming to town tonight, so everyone should come. No, they're not, but first of all, there is a coordinated effort to develop a downtown venue into a performance hall. And secondly, if the existing local attractions can coordinate efforts, utilize the existing web portals that are available, and continue to develop creative approaches to attracting visitors and getting them to stay longer. They're here, let's get them to stay longer. The economic impact will increase. And that's all I have for opportunities, although that encompasses quite a lot.
And I will know we're not getting into strategies, but again, since that's going to be the next step, one of the other opportunities or strategies is to better promote some of the things we have, like our 80 miles of hiking trails and our recreation areas, and promote our Amherst as a community that has all of these things, and it's a great place to visit for a variety of reasons. Again, that's sort of strategies, but I think there's more that we can do around tourism and entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the marketing, I think that the coordination among entities that already exist within the community towards a marketing strategy that benefits everyone is really the opportunity. Yeah, okay. Any thoughts? Wow, we're doing well on time. Okay. We're already at business and entrepreneurship. I didn't see Jim Capistran in the audience. No? Oh. So for strengths, town residents are active and involved in development issues and can be allies to appropriate economic development. Graduating students create an available workforce, and the academic talent is very deep and broad. This all translates into a strong market for goods and services. Now, a number of business support initiatives are very recent. They're all positive signs and show a proactive and collaborative approach. The spirit of collaboration really stands out here. I think it's really important. The bid is working with local businesses and with town departments and others. The university is working with the town. And Amherst Works, for example, is a collaboration of local developers, a local architect, and a local business owner. So these are all good signs and a strong foundation. So this is an area of overlap with the tourism and entertainment SWOT, but looking at it from a slightly different angle. The characteristics of downtown make it a very desirable place to have a business. And this is translated into very low commercial vacancy rates. The village centers also have amenities and have attracted new development recently, particularly in South and North Amherst. And so what I've got listed here are, all of the advantages of downtown and a little bit of the vision of, how I imagine people want it to be. So there's potential for new business. Oh, we're still on strengths, not potential. Okay. Collaboration is a key ingredient here as well. Local developers have collaborated with the community and with each other. And the presence of UMass is a strong positive. The Mass Mutual Data Lab and the, I'm not sure how to say it, ALKU office bring more workers downtown and contribute to its image as not just a place to go out to eat, but also a place to live and work. The new marijuana laws have already resulted in a new business, and there are already 2 new restaurants coming. Okay, so that's it for strengths. And ready for your feedback.
Hi, Andy
Hi.
Churchill again. I really think the UMass Centers of Excellence are a tremendous strength, and I hope we can be collaborating statewide to figure out some sort of partnerships with companies that may be headquartered in Boston, but employees can't afford to live there or tired of the congestion or whatever, that there should be some sort of back office or R&D function out here connected with our centers of excellence, I would think.
Thank you.
And you might see that in opportunities.
You might.
I had a question. Is this for downtown, or is this regional, or the whole town?
This
or
is
what
really
the
the
scope?
whole town, yeah.
Okay. So is there going to be a different section on different parts of town and different opportunities, or is the focus generally where the businesses are today?
We're not kind of getting into specific, I mean, sometimes we'll talk about the downtown, but other than that, we're not focusing on any specific areas.
Because I think there's opportunity, like South Amherst has people commuting over the Notch, a very different demographic. North Amherst has where most of the renters live, and it's a commuting corridor where all the people who work at UMass can't afford to live in Amherst, so they commute from the north, and we're building a new downtown with a square around it in North Amherst, and I think that's up and coming opportunity. So I hope you'll look at that in your work. Yeah.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that's probably part of the next phase, right, Jeff? That you'll be maybe diving into more specifics.
So what I heard is that there are different demographics and populations in different parts of town, and so different businesses might cater better depending on where in town and who they're catering to. So I think that's a great point.
Absolutely.
Hi, David Levenstein. I think a strength to potentially attract businesses and entrepreneurs here is the relative to the Boston or to the New York areas, the relative affordability, the cost of living, as well as the amenities of strong schools, and that is an opportunity to market, to bring, or to prolong a spinoff from leaving here that needs to be better advantaged.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so weaknesses. At the moment, there's no local small business support organization in the sense of providing resources for startups and growing businesses. The Mass Small Business Development Center does send someone here about once a month, but it's by appointment only, and from what I understand, no one's been making appointments, and so he hasn't been coming. So more people, there needs to be a way for people to know about that resource and make the appointments and then they'll be available. I guess he was also coming to Amherst Works, another, like a Wednesday each month, and wasn't getting any takers, so he gave up on that. So I think it's just a lack of awareness of the availability of it. The K-On Accelerator was a great start, an ambitious start, but ultimately did not succeed. It was probably not its time, you know. Wasn't ready for that here. There's little commercially zoned land available for development, and redevelopment and infill in existing commercial centers is always complicated and time-consuming no matter where you are. Land is expensive, rent is expensive. New businesses coming out of UMass usually end up having to search in nearby towns for space, and many times further afield in Springfield or Boston, or God forbid, New York. Zoning, okay, so zoning. Yes. Zoning is an issue that is dividing people at this point, and for that reason, I've put it here as a weakness. It's very complex, and we're open to talking about it right here at this meeting, but it's very difficult to categorize it into one slot, you know, as weakness or strength or opportunity or threat, you know. It's kind of all of those things. So we have a couple more slides on weaknesses to go through, and then we can circle back around to talking about the zoning issues, if you wish. So access and transportation in Amherst can be difficult. We know there are transit cuts and traffic can be congested at times. Parking is also perceived to be limited downtown. The retail market studies show that there is significant retail leakage just outside of town, namely, mostly in Hadley. So certain types of businesses are not going to do well in Amherst, or they just may avoid Amherst entirely. And unfortunately, we've heard from students that they don't feel welcome. So that's unfortunate. So that is weaknesses, and we can stop here to talk about any of those in terms of small business promotion, land availability, zoning, and deterrence to visitors. I can go back to
Connie
this
Gillen. I have friends who have shops downtown, and one of the biggest problems is that we don't have a stable year-round population. And so it's very hard in the summer months and in January to keep a business going. I like the summer programs at Amherst College and UMass, and I wish there were more of them.
Hi, my name is Narayan. I'm from the Institute for Applied Life Sciences on campus. And just to address your point, or somebody else's point about attracting businesses from the Boston area away from New York and other places, I think there are a couple of things. One, we're not competing now with Boston and New York. It's more about the Waltham and the Worcester area, especially look from the life sciences area and the biotech companies. And what we're doing, and something that we could work with, is we've got what is called collaboratories, where startups from within and outside UMass can come and rent space on a monthly basis and get a bench space to work on. So I think we're competing with the similar facilities in Worcester. So it's very, very beneficial to folks who start in that space because we don't dilute IP, and we could get into the details, but it's something that we could highlight to attract more people.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Bill Gillen. My old saw is that if we would subsidize transportation for people within Amherst, then people wouldn't have to worry about parking. And I'm thinking you could go to Uber and say, how about a pilot project? we'll give free rides or highly subsidized rides to anyone within Amherst to going anywhere in Amherst. They don't need any parking. They don't need a second car. This would save any discussion and expense of building a parking garage, and you could use the monies that might have been spent on building parking and creating parking, instead use it to subsidize a ride service, within town ride service. And if you want to try one out, do it for the farmer's market. That's what I would like. So people would come and they would have a way to get back to their car, wherever they parked it, with their armful of groceries.
Thanks, Bill. I think that's a great strategy. Is there a hand over there? No?
Again, to get to Cinda's point, I work in the Amherst Office Park, and there's a lot of vacancies there. And the last meeting, I found out that the rents are a fraction of what they are anywhere else in town, $5 a foot.
I'm sorry, where is that?
Around Pomeroy and West Street. Moan and Dove Bar. So I put together a Facebook page that didn't really go anywhere, where I got people from that area to say, here are the businesses we'd support: a bakery, a food store, a Jewish deli, etc. But I think we need follow-up on the other side. And I did meet with Jeff a couple of times, and we were just discussing it. But an advertising campaign that said, here's what people would buy from you if you opened a store in Amherst or South Amherst.
Thank you. So I think we're getting a little into strategies, and I want to make sure that we have time to do threats and opportunities. So right now we're talking about weaknesses, business and entrepreneurship.
The lack of coordination.
Thank you. Hello? Yeah.
Just in terms of the research park land, I know we have a PRP up in the north part of the town that doesn't have any utilities going to it. So that's a pretty big weakness, and I don't know how you deal with that.
Yeah, and I just was noticing in the master plan that that was something that was in there about providing. Just happened to notice.
Well, I know this sounds odd, but when I think of obstacles to development, I would say that in the past 30 years, there has been tremendous opposition to development and a negative attitude about economic development. It's very difficult to come up with a dynamic plan, coordinate it and implement it unless the will of the town is that this is where we want to go. So I think we really have to look at that, and we have to try to come up with something that the town gets behind, and then the leadership can be dynamic and the results can be outstanding.
Thank you.
Can I summarize that as saying there's an overall lack of vision or plan for where we want to get to? Is that sort of?
Well, and lack of agreement on whether we want to develop anything.
Hi. This is a classic Amherst story. I don't know all the minute details or anything, but we have the Laverdia group that wanted to build a hotel convention center over on Hadley. And it had grand plans, expansion, you know, all above it to help promote, to make something happen with UMass and, you know, private enterprise. And so, you know, it all goes down to studies and everything like that. And then the next thing you know, the town just changes the whole thing and changes it into a floodplain. Then they can't build. There you go.
Nils LaCour, former town planner. I guess I would argue that we do have a vision, and we've had a vision for a very long time. When one of the maps I've always gone back to is a 1973 SCOG report, Select Committee on Goals, where they talked about preserving all the open space and concentrating development in the village centers. That's been a idea and vision that was reconfirmed in our most recent master plan process, where I would argue there's plenty of support for development. The trouble is, change is always difficult for people. And we have to realize that change is sometimes a very good thing. It's kind of nice to be in an area of new buildings and vibrancy. And so I would argue that there's plenty of vision, It's just a matter of allowing it to happen, and that's where we get back to zoning.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, I mean, this can be a little bit more of a discussion about that if people want to. Yes.
In your studies of towns, what's the right balance between protected open space, undevelopable institution land, already developed land, and what should be done with what's left? Is there a recommendation that you could make, or is there an average?
It really varies from town to town so much, depending on what the resources are, depending on what the population wants, you know, depending on what's feasible. I couldn't give you a formula at all. I mean, Amherst is unique because of all the institutions and all the preserved open space and agricultural land. So, you know.
Is there a recommendation to be made about our case then, if not a comparison? Just like of what's left and what's been protected and what should be done with it? Or is that not?
I don't think that's within the scope of,
yeah, that's not what we're doing here, but it's something that could be done.
Sorry to keep popping up. I'll settle down in a minute, but
no problem. No problem.
I think we need to make a better case for what's the purpose of economic development. I think there's people who are, you know, who will articulate concerns about why do we want development, and I think we need to be able to connect the dots between housing affordability and good schools and good roads and not soaking the taxpayers and you know the you know, why would we want economic development? It's not just to enrich developers, it's to provide some sort of base for the things we want in our town, but I don't think that's widely articulated.
We were just talking about that last night.
Some of the things that I think people think are missing from this town are also dying elsewhere. So if we want a nice men's shop in town, but retail's dying all over, and the movement is towards making more stores like Apple Store type showrooms anyway. So I don't know if there's an opportunity for us to build stuff like that, but it's not just that we're leaking, it's that people are buying online anyway. And you know, a lot of the resources in Hadley are B or C grade stores, and
that's
many have
leakage
closed.
Too. The online is considered leakage too.
Alex Kent. That's why I think that the town needs a grocery store, because everyone eats, everyone buys food, and one of the things that I think is missing from our town is a place where people from across the town, from across the economic spectrum can gather, a common space. We don't seem to have many of them. We have a library, with a few other spaces, but we don't have a retail space where everyone can gather, and I think that that's missing. That's where a food co-op can come in.
There are there not? There are 2 grocery stores. Is that correct?
Atkins, and Big Y.
3.
Yeah. The cash registers.
So yeah, I guess I just wanted to correct that because there are grocery stores in Amherst, right?
I'm talking about a community-based business.
Right, so that's
where people have a sense of ownership.
Yeah, a co-op, yeah.
I don't think people have a sense, maybe they think of Atkins as their store, but it isn't, it's Atkins' store, their store.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Hello. It's not moving. There we go. Okay. So there are a variety of threats. I've mentioned this a few times now, development along the Route 9 corridor. It's increased and it will continue to grow. The leasing issue could be an obstacle. and zoning might restrict some desirable projects. I'm trying to remember, did I already talk about the long-term lease issue? But the need for long-term leases is sometimes an issue. Also, the traditional inns and B&Bs in Amherst have reported that they are losing visitors to Airbnbs, and legislation to regulate short-term rentals is in the works, but we don't know what the outcome is going to be. Both for what the legislation is going to be and what the impact will be on all parties, on the Airbnbs, on the town in sort of managing it, and on the traditional lodging establishments. So I'm putting it as a threat because it's an unknown and there's a potential for negative impacts, and we just don't know. Also, demand for parking, and someone mentioned this. It can take, you know, people feeling like there's not enough parking can take up a lot of time and money, debate and construction, and there may be other solutions. So I'll just leave it at that. So that's it for threats.
Comments, additional threats? And based on the timing, it looks like we'll have plenty of time after we get through the opportunities too to continue the discussion if you want to see those first.
Okay. Okay, well that's good because the list of opportunities is very long. I think there's 5 slides. So I'll go through them somewhat briefly and then we can discuss. So with the new form of government that you now have, it may be a good time to take a look at the master plan, which is about 8 years old now. And I'm not a fan of like totally redoing plans every 10 years. I think they can be refined and updated. But this was a really good one, and it's good for a while, I think, as far as the fundamentals of it. But the town would also want to look at whether the zoning continues to support the vision in the master plan. The town can encourage redevelopment and infill of existing commercial areas, especially with an eye to redeveloping historic buildings. One thing to seriously look into would be a regional research facility with potential revenue sharing. This is something that has been done elsewhere successfully, and it's worth looking into. The new economic development director could take on some of these projects that are listed here and possibly assist small businesses with local regulations, finding space, and navigating their first few years in town. So the Amherst Works space is actually part of a work bar network that has co-working spaces in the Boston area, which is kind of neat. So not only can folks from Amherst go visit there, but people from Boston could come out here, work in that space and see what it's like to be in Amherst, and some of them might like it very much. The creation of the bid is a big one. It has given the town a valuable new resource, and there are many opportunities to pursue there. And I've listed some here. I should add that the wayfinding amenities should also probably be in that list. And wayfinding can be really helpful in helping visitors stay longer because, you know, they're following the paths and they're seeing more things to do. Local venture capitalists may begin to pay more attention to Amherst as some of the other factors that we're mentioning come to fruition. And the town can tap into many other regional resources that are available, such as that's Valley Venture Mentors, the VVM, the Alchemy Fund, Common Capital, and there's more. So UMass, it's a big thing. There's so much going on, just not far from here, as someone pointed out. The recent collaboration between UMass and the town was extremely fruitful, and it would be ideal to maintain a close working relationship there. UMass has accelerated their efforts to commercialize research and startups. The university can now allow startups on campus, which was not always the case. And staff is now dedicated to assist those businesses. Right now, several small startups are about to come out of UMass, and there are quite a few more in the pipeline. So this means that as this continues and they ramp up this process, that more and more small businesses are going to be coming out and seeking space, some of them very locally, some of them further afield. But that's a huge opportunity. In addition, UMass graduates in many fields would like to stay in the area, and they may have more opportunities as more businesses locate here. And because of all of this, there has been interest in developing a high-tech business incubator for quite some time now. And I'm going to get into a little bit more of this. Oh, here we are. Okay, so yes, this is the long list. And there's so much going on, and I've probably missed some things, but essentially many, many departments and entities at UMass are working towards economic development goals. There's so much going on that this would be a whole nother presentation. So I've given you a quick list of the major players, and as I just said, UMass is working with, but it bears repeating, working with faculty and local industries, partnering with local industries to commercialize new inventions and research, and also working with students to develop their entrepreneurial skills. So, I mean, that's it in a very small nutshell. So another opportunity here would be to kind of let more people know what's happening, to kind of expand on this and educate folks in town about what's going on at UMass. And I think that many people may not be aware. So, and while this is all going on, there may not be space or facilities in Amherst right now. It may take some time for that to develop, but the town can still benefit from businesses locating in adjacent communities. Because Amherst is still a destination for dining, for attractions, any residents and businesses that are in proximity to Amherst are still going to be coming here and spending money. And some might ultimately move into town. New businesses might hire college grads. We have that great workforce that we talked about. And some of them, and so the multiplier effects are just huge. So it's worth it actually encouraging people. It's not like if they're not going to come to Amherst, then just let them go. It's worth encouraging them to stay nearby. Okay, so there are some good opportunities for other new business types. I already mentioned agriculture-based businesses, and there could be new research on marijuana and its health impacts. And someone here brought that up, and we definitely think that that is a possibility. The retail market study indicated there is most likely demand for new shops as well as high tech. And there are other types of small businesses. There are other entities coming out of UMass that are not high tech, that are like service-based industries, coming out of all the many schools at UMass in landscaping, interior design, food services, photography. So many of these types of small companies can make a home right here in Amherst and serve the local population, which can afford to pay for those types of services. So that's a real opportunity. So there you have it. And here we are. We almost look like the picture, right?
So additional questions, comments, suggestions for opportunities for business and entrepreneurship?
Basically, I need a guide if I want to find something out at UMass. I get lost in menus and press this and press that. And then when I finally get there, there's usually, I'm not at my desk right now. So we need to have a way to access this, people to do the entrepreneurship with at the university. That's real live and friendly and capable.
So you've actually tried to access entrepreneurial resources?
Well, on my farm, I call up about how to market, help me market such and such, and I can't find anyone to talk to. I don't know where to go. Am I going to the Eisenberg School, the Stockbridge School, or I need a guide.
Other comments?
Of the new housing being built in town, I mean, I think that most of it is students, even though it was advertised not as students. We keep talking about how we should be attracting young families and young professionals, and I don't know what would get those people to come and live here. Maybe a place that you can live and work for a certain stage, or just promote the fact that we want young professionals and get some developer interested in building that specific thing, not saying we're going to attract anybody and then it's built for students.
Mm-hmm. I think that, places like the Mass Mutual Data Labs and the Alcu consulting firm, places like that, even the marijuana facility is probably attracting that demographic.
But the housing is students.
I don't think you can overestimate the issue of housing, and housing is a dynamic to who is able to live here, as well as that impact on the local economy and the whole issue of visitors versus residents. We have basically suppressed our housing for the last 40 years, and we are thousands of units behind in the kind of housing that we should provide our community.
Thank you.
Hi, your presentation at least twice mentioned high-income households as a potential market, or the as the demand or the market. And I again want to ask, who are we targeting when we think about this economic development? Are we thinking that I feel like there's a perception that Amherst is peopled with wealthy homeowners, but I feel like there's a significant population that's invisible to issues like this, that are low-income families that live in apartments. So I lost my train of thought, but just is that an opportunity to target that population, to think about what economic development looks like to them, what would they like to see more of in town? So thank you.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and the retail market study kind of focused on different market segments, and there was the kind of the lower income segment, which was really primarily students, although certainly others. But it's the higher income folks who are going to be spending the money on the goods and services in town, and therefore present a market opportunity for that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Following on Jennifer's comment, about 1/3 of our public school students are receiving free or subsidized lunch. So there is a large fraction of the town's population that is low income and largely invisible. I think there's an opportunity, again on grocery, for other ways of distributing or making shopping opportunities available to people in town and in the housing communities. Northampton is now studying a mobile market, a truck that would deliver fresh, wholesome food to people in low-income housing sites. There is such a thing in Springfield. I think that it's something that our town should consider. There are mobility issues, difficulties of access to transportation, and for many people, time is a very big issue. And I think it restricts their access to all the abundance of food, the food opulence in our community. And I think that a mobile market is something that should be considered in the context of economic development.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah LaCorrigan. I'd like to go back to zoning and a comment you made about, does our current zoning match the vision in our master plan? And I would say absolutely not. One of the things that I believe was supposed to happen when we did our master plan was have a comprehensive rewrite of our zoning. That did not happen, and as much as that would be a huge undertaking, I think it's absolutely what we need to be doing. We have been sort of putting Band-Aids on and little fixes and tweaks here and there, and we're really not solving our zoning problem. We just need to holistically look at the whole thing and figure out what development should be occurring, making it easier to build housing of all types, making it easier to build mixed-use development, so we're getting the retail, the office, the lab space, all the kinds of things we need. There's really, really great new modern ways to zone. Form-based code is one. We tried that. We should look at that again. So I really would love us to just throw our zoning in the trash and start over and make sure it fits our new a vision that we can come to and get, all these fabulous opportunities are going to be very difficult under our current zoning. Thank you.
Eric Nakajima. So I have a couple of somewhat disconnected thoughts to offer into something. One, I completely agree with that comment about zoning, and I'd also argue that regardless of what the discussion is around revisiting the master plan, I actually don't think we need to revisit it, and I don't think we actually need to revisit it wholesale at all. I think if you look at it, and you look at things like the U3 report that was done a couple years ago, they already encompass a basic vision for connecting the university, leveraging the student market, preserving open space, developing our village centers in downtown, and doing that in concert with historic preservation. And so I think the vision is largely there. What we've missed and struggled with as a community is sort of the next step of implementation, either in terms of neighborhood-specific plans. I mean, let me back up. I recognize we often try these things and then can't get them adopted. So I'm not trying to, I recognize the politics of town meeting and other stuff is frustrated to be able to do it. But that doesn't mean that the point of emphasis shouldn't still be focused on that next step of where we should be trying to gain consensus. I also think, going back to a comment that was made earlier, I think we should stop talking about either open space or historic preservation and cultural assets as a trade-off and a challenge relative to economic development, because I actually think they're mutually reinforcing benefits and assets for the community if done right. And the entire point of our economic development strategy is we should be trying to find a way to do it right. So I'll give you a tangible example of that. In the downtown, it's almost unimaginable that we would be developing around, lots of new development around the town common. So if you look at where we have the Grace Episcopal Church, the Town Common, the line of shops across there, Amherst College, and Town Hall, I mean, that represents, in terms of our identity, sort of visual appeal for the town, a really strong downtown anchor in terms of our historic heritage. And so I think, to me, the message is none of us are going to screw with that. That's a tremendous amenity and asset for us, which means then there ought to be other parts of downtown that should be able to evolve and develop. And to me, it's both at the same time. I'd also reinforce something that was said earlier, that we should be calling out our village centers, as they used to be called, like East Amherst, down towards Atkins, Pomeroy Lane area, up in North Amherst, because those are tremendous opportunity sites for us. And I think they're also opportunity areas for both neighborhood-serving retail and services, as well as also new businesses and entrepreneurs and destination shopping. And I don't think it has to be either or. And I think, frankly, when we think about the challenges we have around developable land, that means we've got to leverage the land we do have. We've got to leverage the areas that we do have, and that's perfectly consistent with the master plan. And then the final point I'd make is that UMass, over the last 10 years, has done enormous things to try to improve its engagement with industry, its industry-relevant facilities and services, as well as entrepreneurship stuff. And you know this, Jeff, I know I was telling you something you already know, that on the town side or on the business side, we have tremendously underdeveloped capacity to match what the university does. So whether finding out things that are up at the university or simply having a capacity, UMass is going to do what UMass does. And I don't mean that as an insult. It has its own mission, it has its own identity, it has its own reason for being. And so the challenge is, other than Jeff and Sarah and a couple other people, there aren't a lot of folks who get up in the morning thinking to themselves, what do I do to connect and leverage these resources and take them to the next level? And the Western Massachusetts Economic Development Council is always going to be Hamden-centric. It's just the way it is. And I'm not saying we've talked about this a lot, I'm not saying we need a new institution or a new sort of structure, but my point is we've got to think creatively about what the delivery vehicles are for connecting what's coming out of the university on the private business side. Otherwise, we're going to under leverage those assets because we can't rely on UMass to do that for us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Andy Steinberg from the Select Board. There are a couple things that we've been talking about. One is master plan and another zoning, and I want to touch on those two topics really quickly. The master plan process was a very good process for those of us who were in town at that time and participating in it, because it involved a lot of opportunity for a lot of citizen participation in the discussion that evolved to the master plan. The fact that we haven't revisited the master plan process in a long time has meant that a lot of people who've moved into town who have heard of the master plan, they can see the master plan, but they weren't involved in that process. And the suggestion that comes out of the new charter that once elected, the council will lead us through a review of the master plan process is a great opportunity, because it will create a chance for many people who live in town and were not involved in the development of the master plan to be a part of it and to take ownership over it, which then segues into zoning. And we've heard a lot about that today. But in connecting the master plan to zoning and to the downtown, as you walk through particularly the north end of downtown, if you look critically at a number of the different buildings in there, the question has to come to mind as to whether the buildings that exist now are all consistent with the vision of the master plan, and whether they are consistent with what it is that we can see as the highest and best use of our village center. And I think we now have the opportunity to connect all of those pieces together.
Thank you. Seeing no more comments from the crowd, and I think that was probably oh, I see one more.
You may find that the gas station and the fire station downtown don't belong there because it's not efficient, but I view them both as quirky, and I think the fire station is entertainment. We're at the farmer's market, and those fire engines come off and blare, and it's like a parade. It's very exciting. It's very loud, but I think it's a good thing downtown as the downtown common is.
I've been there when they were out and the little kids they were showing the little kids the engines, yeah.
Hi, I'm Brant Shikis. I'm from the Center for Data Science at UMass, and I feel like I want to pick up on a couple of themes about entrepreneurship and innovation that you, Eric, made, and you, sir, made, Bill. I think, as you pointed out, there is tremendous energy in the university to do entrepreneurship and promote innovation. And I think the point you made, Eric, is that, like, I know within my research center, the Center for Data Science, we are trying to do just that. I very much feel your pain. As being on the inside, it's not clear to me how to connect to the outside. We've done a few things. I have a friendly face here in Jeff, who's been my partner to create opportunities for students because there's many students looking for interesting opportunities, not just graduates, master's students around during the summertime, looking for startup opportunities. We've done some events in Amherst Works, but it's been very disorganized. And I think that's really just because on the university side, we're just trying to figure it all out. We're starting up our innovation programs. They're becoming more and more sophisticated, but we're still just getting our feet wet. So I think for people like us on the university side, if we did have, a little bit better way of engaging with the town as we get better with creating these new companies, rather than just maybe, Jeff's been great, but we need more than Jeff to realize the real potential here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, Kurt Shumway. To capture that and some other things that have been said, I think if UMass, one of our greatest assets here, can find a way to extend the leasing that was mentioned earlier. We're such a small town, just a little bit of leasing that can provide bankable opportunities for developers that are willing to take the risk. There would be a huge impact in this town because it's so small. Residential is understandably more easy to consider. Office development is very, very difficult. So if we could find a way to do that, that would be awesome. Something longer than 5-year leases that you can risk building something new, or even take existing space. Something to fill in what's still available.
I like Amherst Works, but it seems that it's mostly built for people that are solopreneurs and don't have employees. And most companies in this country are under 10 employees. Actually, 80% of all tax returns of businesses are sole proprietors with no employees. So most companies don't have employees at all. But for the ones that have under 10, it seems like the people that are coming out of Valley Venture Mentors, this could be a place that if there was a lease building that somebody could rent a space for a few employees, that would also be a major strength.
Yes, so that's what I was going to do. I didn't know, Laura, if you had any final comments or you want me to wrap up, or?
You can wrap up. I don't know if Susan wants to. I mean, it's a lot to summarize all this stuff.
All right. I guess I'll just wrap up then by saying a couple things. One, thank you all for coming and participating. I think this was really valuable. Two, if you leave your name and email address, I'll be sure to send out information about when the video gets posted, because this is recorded. We'll also put the presentation online on the Economic Development webpage, and the online surveys where people can respond individually, and we go through almost everything we talked about today, and you can say it's the strength, the weakness, and like I said, add your own. I also see that I bought way too many donuts and cider, so please have another one. And then the last thing I'll mention is we're going to have a third public forum, likely before the end of June, where we're going to sort of try and pull all three things together: the final reports on the economic indicators, the final retail analysis, and the SWOT analysis based on all this feedback, and then the next phase, probably not at the next meeting, but at some future date, we're going to start talking about strategies. Now that we have all this data, now that we know what our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, what are some strategies? What are we actually going to do about it? So thank you again. Oh, and I'll also mention kravitzg@amherstma.gov if you want to send me additional comments. That'll be listed on the website as well, and happy to incorporate those. So thank you, everybody. And thank you to Pioneer Valley Planning Commission and Lori and Susan for coming. Thank you.